and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm thrilled you can join us today. We are going to be talking with the founder of Answers for Elders, and they are all about serving not only our seniors, but those that care for them. But before I introduce you to our guest, I always like to give a shout out first to the Mark Arneson Band, who lets us use their music clearing call for our opening song, which you can download, by the way, on any of your favorite music platforms. And then also, we're always getting new listeners. So for those of you that really don't know much about us, I'm Lori LeBay. My mom lived with dementia for 30 years, and I wanted to do something to help us all connect and not feel so isolated and find the resources, tools, and products that we need. And so we started Alzheimer Speaks, which is a gathering basically of friends and colleagues and people all around the world at all different levels. Everyone is welcome, from those diagnosed to families to businesses that serve. We have musicians and singers and songwriters and movie directors and researchers and advocates and even kids. Kids are doing some pretty powerful stuff out there. So again, I just want to welcome you all to the show today. And I'm going to do a couple of quick shout outs here. One is I want to remind people to check out our mothership, alzheimerspeaks.com. There we have one tab you can click on that will get you all of our free resources, which there are many, from tools to different types of recordings like dementia chats, where the true experts are actually living with dementia, to if you're looking for keynotes and programs, we do that. We can also help you with advertising as well in a real niche market. Now, another one that I want to give a shout out to is Dementia Map. Dementia Map is something that I collaborated with Dave Weidrich on. Dave is the founder of the Memory Cafe Directory. And so we worked together to come up with this concept that I've actually wanted for almost 40 years. From the day my mom was diagnosed, I thought, why isn't there a place where we can find services, products, and tools easily and that doesn't cost us an arm and a leg? In fact, our site is totally free to access. We have over 150 different categories. We are building it slowly, but everyone is welcome, from large businesses to small businesses to people that don't even look at themselves as a business, but are a great resource. So please go check out dementiamap.com. Okay, so with no further ado, let me go ahead and introduce you to Suzanne Newman. She is the host of Answers for Elders radio show and podcast, and she has actually spent the past 25 years in sales and media and marketing management before she was kind of pulled into a 6-year journey that would change her life. On this journey, caring for her mother, it would become one of the greatest and yet most challenging segments of her life. And through her trials and tribulations of being a family caregiver herself, it really inspired her to move outside of corporate and to build Answers for Elders, which helps provide support and educate families across the country who are experiencing their own journey within this complicated world of elder care. And within each of her episodes for Answers for Elders, Suzanne is joined by a vetted, trustworthy professional. And they have over 65 categories of expertise, including health and wellness, life changes, living options, money, law, and so much more. Well, Suzanne, I am so thrilled to have you on the show today. We have known each other for years.
Yes, we have.
doing the same thing in different ways. And it's just been really fun to watch you grow in terms of what you're doing with Answers for Elders. So I can't wait for our audience to hear more about what you're doing. But before I go into my line of questioning, I always ask everybody if they've been personally touched by dementia in any shape or form in their own family or circle of friends.
It has touched my life in several ways, but most importantly, number one, my stepmother passed away from Alzheimer's disease. And that was, watching her in the early stages of, asking me questions over and over again. That was part of it. But my mother also had vascular dementia, which was a symptom and an evolution from her COPD and her vascular issues. So, yes, so it has touched my life. And, it's a very, impactful thing. But I also now have the opportunity to interview some of the top doctors in the world that are conducting breakthrough clinical trials on advances in treatment of Alzheimer's and dementia. And that gives me hope, because I really believe that there is a future out there, that there will be a cure. And I've heard some amazing things, and I've really been honored to visit directly with them. So
wonderful. I know that feeling all too well, especially when it's hit your family and that question hovers. Consciously or unconsciously, could I be next? And does it run in the family? All of those things, we don't really talk about, but it floats through people's minds.
Well, and now they're identifying that there's a chemical in the brain. It's amyloids, I think is what it's called, that actually they can detect early. And by doing that, and if they detect it early before symptoms show up, they can actually treat that person, and they will never get the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. And that's amazing. So
yeah, there's a lot of controversy out there because there was a nun study. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, where some people, the nuns, some of them had amyloid and never had any symptoms of
amyloids.
Dementia.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And others had the amyloids and were fine. I mean, it was just kind of all over the board. So there's in the research area, what I hear is there's a lot of different variables. And I know for me, one of the things that I'm also really interested in is the social care and getting the support until we get a cure. And I kind of think it's probably going to end up being like cancer, where there's so many different, they're going to need different cocktails for different versions of cancer.
Correct. Absolutely. There's so much more to learn. But I think, Lori, one of the things that's really powerful is that, you and I, who talk to people every day, I do believe someday there will be a cure, at least in the early stages of Alzheimer's and dementia. And I think that's closer than we realize.
I think so too. Anyways, I want to hope so.
Yeah.
And our thoughts make our realities. So if we can get everybody on that page, maybe we can speed up that process. Let's talk a little bit about your backstory in terms of you caring for your mom. Everybody kind of walks into this journey in a different
Don't we ever?
So how did you end up in that role? Or was that something you always thought would happen?
No. So Lori, what happened with me in my world, which is kind of crazy, is I ended up being called to take care of my mom in 2005, really, or 2006. I was vice president of a pretty well-known publishing company in sales and marketing. Had a sales team. I was, publishing 2 print publications, overseeing a digital side of the publication, and ended up basically being pulled out of a sales meeting to say my mother had fallen and broken her pelvis. And I remember the feeling of being, sad, concerned, but I also was very annoyed because my mother and I never got along. And I had a very demanding career, and I kind of was a horrible daughter. I didn't pay attention to her at all, except, to show up every once in a while to say hello, but we were not close at all. And my mother and I were like oil and water growing up. I was very different than she was. She was very soft-spoken, very, homemaker. She was very kind and gentle and, just really more of a mom. And that was her total aspiration, where I had this, feeling of being, I wanted to accomplish, the world, I wanted to take on the world. So I was more just focused on selfishness. I was unmarried. She wanted grandchildren. It was everything about me was just the antithesis of what she stood for. And I think that was kind of the interesting thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I guess I can look at myself as being lucky because my mom and I always were very close growing up. But
Oh,
there's
my
a
mother
lot of
was,
people that were.
yeah. And when that happened and I showed up at the hospital, the first thing, they asked me, which is crazy, was, are you the POA? And I looked at them. And of course, I didn't know what a POA was, the quote unquote. And the only thing I could think of is DOA. And I remember standing there in the triage, and I'm sitting there looking at these people in Anacortes, Washington Hospital, which is about 2 hours north of Seattle. And I was like, just frustrated in the fact that I didn't know what I was about to walk into. And it was really interesting, though. And that was really the pivotal moment of my life, because when I walked into the emergency room and saw my mother laying on a gurney, where she used to be like this force for, disapproval and constant criticism to me, she looked up at me with this vulnerability that I saw within her that I'd never seen before. And I don't know what shifted inside of me, but it was all of a sudden, all of that stuff that I had against her went away. And it was like this overwhelming, powerful transformation that happened with my mom and I. I was there 500% for her. And that was, I still don't know what happened. It was really an amazing transformational time of my life. And I really found that, it was a privilege that I wanted to take on. And I did.
Wow. What happened with your career then? Did that get put on hold? Or...
Well,
and I should clarify one thing.
Yes.
You mentioned POA for our listeners who don't know, because there's a lot of us.
Yes,
out there,
POA, power of attorney.
We don't know that stuff till we have to know that stuff.
No. And I wasn't at the time.
Yep. And professionals need to realize when they're talking to us, they have to, they can't use all their acronyms and things because that just increases our stress levels so much.
Exactly. And I think, Lori, what you're saying is very true, because I just remember just feeling like I'm not a stupid person, but I feel stupid because I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what questions to ask. Nobody helped prepare me for what I was about to walk into to see her in that situation. I didn't know what social workers did. I didn't know what caregivers did. I didn't understand the whole process of what a rehab center was, any of this stuff. And I remember distinctly thinking to myself, this is so confusing and I wish I knew more, and I didn't.
Yeah. And they give you that big packet of information that you have no time to even look at.
I was going to say, when are you going to read it?
No. So what, well, going back to your job and your
career.
Yeah. What happened?
Well, immediately I told, when I left that day that I'll be back the next day. I learned really quickly that was not going to happen. So anyway, I ended up basically having to take a leave of absence from work, which did not go over well. But the thing is that it started me on a job, on a new chapter of my life, where the doctor informed me that they were going to relocate. We're sending your mother to be with you down in Seattle so you can continue doing your work. And I remember feeling like, here I am, I'm working my job, full-time job. I would go see her every night because I had no idea how to set boundaries. I was consumed with taking care of her because I felt now, not only did I feel this privilege, but I felt guilty for a lot of the things that I put her through as a child. So I was trying to make up for it. And I'm sure a lot of daughters and sons of, adult parents, they feel that way. It's like, wow, I wasn't the type of child that I wish I would have been, I was very rebellious. And so I definitely, tried to make up for my shortcomings as a daughter. And so my life spun out of control. And as a result, my job performance went down. And of course, in the sales world, that's not a good thing. I always tell people in the sales and marketing world, you get paid exactly what you're worth, as a salesperson. So, so the thing that's interesting about my career was that I went on a leave of absence. I said I have to take time off. My boss said it's not allowed. I did not know there was a Family and Medical Leave Act that I could have utilized in HR. Neither did my boss at the time. And as a result, I found out about that later because they demoted me from my job when I came back, which was illegal. And which really didn't make any sense. So I got my job reinstated because by that time I knew about FMLA, Family and Medical Leave Act. But then just the next downsizing, they phased me out that way. So I was at that time, this was in 2008, I was unemployed from a 6-figure job that actually had a, in a world where they could hire the 35-year-old for half the money. So, and it was 2009, right at the recession time of the stock market crash. Mm-hmm. And so there I was in a scenario where I was overpaid for what the market was going to give me. And I just kept helping my mom, but my whole world fell apart. I lost my home to foreclosure during that time. There was just a lot of turmoil in my life. I had no ability no grounding. I just felt like everything was gone. And certainly my circle of friends were gone because a lot of them were work related. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that happens. And certainly, I just remember this feeling of, I had this voice in the back of my head. And I am a big reader of, I don't know if you're familiar with Emma Curtis Hopkins, but she's one of the, she has backgrounds in Christian Science, but she then became one of the top teachers in New Thought. Mm-hmm. And Emma is a mystic. She was a mystic. She was way ahead of her time. And one of the things Emma said in one of her teachings was, if you see a job, it's yours. And you really think about what I was going through. And I kept saying, there needs to be a place where people can learn what they're dealing with, where they can ask the proper questions. So when they meet with people, they can find that. So that's what happened with my career is I wrote a business plan. I cashed out my 401k, which was dismal at that point in time. Which wasn't very much money, but I did the best I could and started Answers for Elders. So that's what happened.
Wow. I want to ask you, because you've been through so much, what's the number one question you would encourage others to ask providers when you get thrown into this whole big mess? And I mean, that's what everyone considers it. It's just a big flipping mess.
Well, I'm going to flip that question around on you because I think it's a responsibility with the provider. I always ask providers, what's the number one question at the back of somebody's mind? And that is, can I trust you? It's not about how much it costs. It's not about anything, but it's that feeling of, I feel vulnerable. My loved one is very vulnerable. I, as an adult child or as a senior, I have all kinds of fear about the unknown of my life. And how can I make sure that you as a provider will take care of me? And, a lot of times they go in with these slick sales pitches and, you're taken into a retirement living and you're given a tour and all these things. And you just sit there and you think to yourself, I remember that feeling of feeling like a deer in the headlights. And what I needed was some sort of an assurance that they were trustworthy, that my mother would matter. And I think that goes with anything and anyone in our industry, is remembering what the process is that families are dealing with. So if that makes sense for what I'm sharing, that's what I would say.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. I know for me, it was, you're not just serving one.
No,
you're serving a family. So don't think for a moment that you're just serving one, because I've got a vulnerable adult here, and you're going to have to answer to me, and I can be your biggest raving fan, or I can be your worst nightmare.
Exactly.
And it's up to you how you want to deal with me. Are you going to be respectful of both of us and our questions and our thoughts and our opinions? And are you going to use that as a learning experience as well? Because there's a lot of people out there that won't ask those questions. And the whole process can just be done so much easier if we work as a team.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. It's that element of respect.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times I would go into like a doctor's appointment with my mom, and yes, she had vascular dementia, but she could carry on a conversation and she knew that she was there. I mean, she wasn't, out of it, right? She just got things screwed up, right? So, but the bedside manner of so many doctors that I experienced was just horrific. I mean, and I called up some of them out to their face right there in the meeting. It's like, you know what? This is my mother's life. You speak to my mother. You don't speak to me. And this diminishment of talking about her like she's not in the room. Like, I think your mom needs to do this. It's like, what is this? Where have we gone that we don't respect, number one, the senior, but number two, the support that a caregiver provides in the fact of understanding the dynamic. And, it just blows my mind sometimes how, our seniors and their caregivers are treated.
Well, and, when you said about talking about them when they're right in the room, you really have to advocate. And I had one gentleman who was caring for his wife with dementia, and he fired his financial planner. This is not just for medical professionals. This is for all of us. This is for family. This is for friends. This is for everybody. And what he said to his financial planner, when you disrespect her, you disrespect me. She might
Thank God for him.
Yeah. And he said, I was really uncomfortable that he understood our situation because of the way he acted. And I'm sure the guy didn't like losing his account one little bit, but hopefully he learned something from that.
You'd think so. Sadly, they don't. And oftentimes it's like, I don't know. And it's just really, I think one of the things that I'm really glad to see is I'm glad to see organizations out there like healthcare that are starting to do more in the way of telehealth, which is helpful. And also in the way of doing, like One Medical Seniors, they actually take the time with everybody where they just don't rush you in like cattle. They explain things and they put things through to take the time. And I think that's starting to shift. I hope, my fingers crossed, but I've always been an advocate for, making sure that our seniors matter. People, need to be seen and heard, and so do caregivers.
Exactly. For those of you that are new and just tuning in right now, we are talking with Suzanne Newman, the founder of Answers for Elders. And we've been talking about her journey, how caring for a mother who she didn't really get along with changed her life and was really unexpected. But it sounds like there were some gifts wrapped in there where they were able to, come back together. And we're talking about teamwork and response, how we talk, how we interact with one another.
Mm-hmm.
So again, check out her website, which is answersforelders.com, or you can always email her at Suzanne at Answers for Elders too. Let's keep going. This is just I love talking with you. You know that. I could talk with you.
I love talking to you too, girlfriend.
All day long. So, Suzanne, I really want to talk to you about the inspiration for creating Answers for Elders. Everybody has those moments where they're going to do something, but 99% of the population doesn't get off the stick and actually do it. So, how did you make this all happen?
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, Lori. But I never wanted a family to go through what I went through. My mother thought she was prepared for her aging years. She wasn't. My family was pretty much dropped her in my lap and I had no support. I was single at the time. So I was trying to, I felt like I was grasping at any sort of answer in the world. And yet I realized that I was just so ill-equipped to make life-changing decisions that I was making on her behalf as she declined, to really, it's not fair. It's not set up that way. And so I started with the vision that I wanted a place where people could get answers. That's the name of the site. It started out in 2009 as a website, as a content site. I was lucky enough to raise enough seed money to get going. But had some bumps along the way in the early stages, like we all do. But I was very fortunate in the fact that I just knew that there was something internally within me. And I think, I use visualization a lot for my, when I set goals or what am I going to accomplish? I had this vision in my head of like the phoenix rising out of the ashes. I knew that there was a former boss that I used to work for that, whenever we experienced failure in their lives, like I had done, there's a saying by Abraham Lincoln that he would quote to me. And it was, it's never a disgrace to fall in the mud. The disgrace is when you lie there and squeal like a pig. I am not a victim. I will never choose to be a victim. And I made the choices to get me in the situation that I was in. But I also could make the choices to do something with that experience and help others in the process. And I think that's really what was the impetus to start AFE, was to really take, my experience and use that as what not to do. I was the poster child for pretty much everything that could go wrong, did go wrong. But I made a choice to do something positive. So
that's wonderful. And I'm so glad that you made that happen, because you've affected so many people's lives,
Oh, thank you.
Probably
Lori.
not just around the country, but around the world, because people are scrounging for this information, and it's long overdue.
It is
to meet that need on a real personal, everyday, in the trenches level.
What you're saying is so true. And it's like, it's amazing when I get, every once in a while I'll get a little note on social media, mostly, on our Facebook page. Somebody will send me a note and say, thank you for your radio show. Thank you for what you do, because it helped my family so much. And that's the thing I think that's so important, is that families should not have to suffer like this. Aging should not be so difficult. And, it makes me angry so often when I see scare tactics come across, like your Medicare is going to be gone, or all these things that happen. It's using fear to keep people afraid. And it doesn't have to be that way. It can be supportive. It can be loving. It can be a very special time for seniors and their loved ones to be, surrounded in, the special magical moments, and being a caregiver. I always say, was my greatest privilege. It was the hardest thing in my life that I'd ever done, but it was also my greatest privilege. It was something that I wanted to convey to people that are there taking care of their loved ones. There are those magical moments, those miracles that happen, whether it's a glimmer of an eye or, a conversation that you never would have had when you were younger. It's that connection that you carry with you. And I will say now, my mom passed away in 2011, and it's those magic moments that stay with me, every day. And I am so lucky now I get to honor her every day of my life. When I'm working with families, it's like reliving my own journey again. And, but this time I know better.
Well, and I think, storytelling is such a powerful mode of communication and support. And it allows people to be heard. And, there's no one way that's right or wrong. Every person is different. Every environment's different. Every relationship, resources, all of that stuff. And yet our healthcare system has this cookie cutter model. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. And it's ridiculous. It needs to be much more customized. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is to listen to people, I think, the way you and I do, to include them in the conversation. Because, and again, this is just a pet peeve of mine with all this stuff, but I think people think once they push something out, it's perfect and it never needs to change. And I think everything we push out needs to be fluid, and we always have to be looking at how can we best meet the needs. But when the hierarchy
and meeting the needs has to be in where people miss the mark in our industry, is they focus way too much on the practical, like you're going to save money and you're going to do this, rather than the emotional needs. Exactly. I always tell a story. I don't know if you ever heard I guess I'll share it. If you've heard it, you probably heard it before, but I talk about the Monte Cristo sandwich. And this is a crazy little story, but I shared it on Facebook not too long ago. But, what a senior living provider of mine, shared a story on her podcast. And she basically said to the family, as they're triaging the father in to their community, they asked, what are his favorite foods? And the daughter piped up and she goes, he loves Monte Cristo sandwiches. I make them for him all the time. We go to a restaurant that he wants to go. That's what he loves. So now in the community, they host one day a month. They call it Jack's Monte Cristo Day. And they always have that Monte Cristo sandwich on the menu. And it's called Jack's Monte Cristo sandwich. Now, that is such a simple thing for a senior living community. But that tells Jack every day that he matters. That he's a part. Yes, he's on the menu. And, this is a thing that's filling that emotional need to be heard and to be seen. And I think that that's one of the things that, it's a simple thing for them to do, but my goodness, what does this tell the family every day? Every time they go to share lunch with their dad and they see that on the menu, or they celebrate Jack's Monte Cristo Day, he gets to be honored in a community. All of a sudden, he's an integral part of that community. And that's what I think everybody needs to be, whether you're, whoever you are. That's what signifies home to you, because I'm there, I matter. And I think a lot of times people in our industry, they forget that. They want to show the fancy chef or the restaurant, right? But they don't think about maybe Jack's not going to feel comfortable getting all dressed up because it's such a nice room. Maybe Jack would rather have, a coffee shop that he'd like to go see with his friends, or different kinds of things like that would be, important in his life. And I think that's the thing that we miss. We miss the mark sometimes.
Yeah, it's the soft, comfortable cell, the one that, like you said, touches the heart, because that's what impacts us. That's what calms all of us down. And and it says we've been heard, we're part of the community, we're not left out. Those are huge things. And like
Lori, you and I kind of are the only kinds of people, because we help people tell those stories. We tell the stories of how people want to be heard, and we bring forward the heart and everything that we do. There isn't any other real resource that I know of that's what we do, every day. And I think, we're lucky. We're in a situation where we can do those types of things. It doesn't happen anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, and I call it emotional based training. I think when we can shift the mindset to a heart set, things happen, and they're remembered. It's not a rote remembering, but it's a felt remembering. Even like when you were talking about your mom, it's those little moments, the glint in the eye, the hold in your hand, those little conversations. They're not big, fluffy, woo-hoo, I gotta, this is going to blow everybody's mind, but it blows up your heart, and it makes that connection.
It's the fact that on Christmas Eve one year, when my mother was in skilled nursing at that time, Mom loved oyster stew. It's one of her favorite things that I used to make. So I called the chef at the senior living, and I said, or the skilled nursing, and I said to him, I would like to bring my mom some oyster stew for Christmas Eve. Would you let me do that? And I was a little concerned, because it's oysters, it's shellfish, they want to make sure that they're liable on their property and all that stuff. He was so gracious and so kind. He goes, Suzanne, you bring it to me, maid, I'll heat it up for you and we'll serve it to you. And I mean, Mom, we just surprised her. It was like she ordered something else on the menu. It was like really funny. And I sat there with her on Christmas Eve, but that little oyster stew, the glimmer in my mom's eyes when she looked at that, that bowl of creamy, oysters, it was really special to her. And she said, did you bring this? And I go, yeah, I did. And she was like, I love this. It was so wonderful. And this is like, 5 months before she died. So when you realize that piece, that you can do little things like that, to honor people, that's the heart. That's the thing that lets people know that they care.
Yeah. Well, and the trust that the staff is building with the family, knowing they get it. And we can raise this up even another notch. Let's surprise her by doing this, and we'll bring it out, and you just sit back and enjoy.
Yes.
Huge.
And they did a whole thing of, your daughter's here, and it was so special. And Mom, they even put a little table in the corner and they put a long tablecloth on there, because I was coming, and I said, Mom, I have a little surprise for you. And there we sat the two of us, because I just couldn't bring her home. It was at that point in her life where it was just really, really overwhelming to get her in my door. But you can still do things. You can still make magic moments with those, as they're, she was 5 months away from passing away at that point.
Wow. And we don't know those things,
No.
but you're creating those moments of joy that just embed in your heart.
Exactly.
So why don't you tell us about your passion in terms of education and empowerment for seniors and their families, and how you see yourself doing that through Answers for Elders?
Well, first of all, Eldercare, when I use the term Eldercare, it's interconnected. There is not a thing that you do if you're going to, we'll just use senior living. If you're going to check a loved one into senior living, you need to know their healthcare resources, and you're dealing with healthcare. you're dealing with care plans, you're dealing with social workers, you're dealing with physical or occupational therapists, you're dealing with attorneys, legal documents, financial people, movers, realtors. There's a million different services that are involved, and they all have to somehow handshake together. They have to understand the family. They have to understand the path of how you're moving forward. And if you're the family caregiver or someone that has to move this, this big project forward, right? Which there always is the one. How do you get the right resources to do that? What are the right questions that you need to ask? So my whole point is, and the reason why I use the word empower, a lot of these services, they have 800 numbers you can call to find a place for your parent. And I'll just say that. And they don't educate the client. They tell people that, oh yeah, we have care managers that will assess your people on the phone. Well, they don't. They don't see a single record. They're salespeople mostly. They might know a little bit about how to ask questions. It's given to them on a form, but they're not specifically trained in care plans, understanding the values of that senior, what's most important to them, what their culture is like, anything like that. Instead, you call up, they get your information, and then they send out leads in a blanket area because they get paid based on referral fees by the senior living communities. So what happens is that no matter where you go, there, the senior living community is on the hook for paying up to a month's rent, sometimes more, of a senior's to, house. And you're not even given the full list of what's there, because if they're not cooperative with their service, they're not going to be referred to. So therein lies the little catch-22 in our industry. Well, I don't like that. I don't feel it serves the family. The family, they're invested because they want to use you to use their service. They don't want to educate you so that you could do this on your own as a consumer. That's wrong. That's morally wrong. Nobody knows a senior better than their son or daughter, or adult child, or close family member, or close friend that's helping them. How can they determine what is the right type of community for them to live in? They can't. What it's better to do is what Answers for Elders does is we have at the core of everything, which is called our decision guide. Our decision guide consists of 65 categories of expertise. It's what I call the heartbeat of everything we do. It guides families through what is the industry lingo around this? What do they talk about? What do they do specifically? What are the questions you need to ask for a subscriber? Who are the governing associations that are affiliated with these people? What kind of certification that they need to have? So it's basically a document that you can download. It's free on our website because all my content is free. I don't believe in charging for it. And what I want people to understand is that they can then take that decision guide with them when they're touring a community and know the right questions to ask. They can know how to, there's ways in which, things that they may not think about to ask. So we do that in numerous ways. We also help people understand the whole process of what do elder law attorneys do? What are these documents about? How to set these people up? And then as Answers for Elders has grown now, we are now primarily, and I will say primarily, about 99% of our content on our site now is our podcasts. We have about 1,000 podcasts out on again, using the decision guide as our blueprint. We feature experts in all those 65 categories of expertise to empower families. And each one of our podcasts is under 15 minutes. You can listen to people. You can go in. They're all transcribed, so they're search engine friendly. And so we have the ability now to have people, you can get your questions answered. 99% of the people that have questions can probably find a podcast that we've talked about it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Again, if you're just stopping in, we're talking with Suzanne Newman with Answers for Elders, and in this segment was really interesting. We were talking about how she made her vision to create Answers for Elders come true, and how to serve in a special way that really stands out and creates joyful moments and builds trust. And then, of course, her decision guide, which is free, that you can download. Well, let's keep going here. This is just such good information for our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have had a passion that runs so deep with your seniors and in your community. Talk a little bit, because a lot of people might not know on my channel about your 12 days of goodness, and then the Washington therapy doodles too.
Well, again, this comes from my passion. 12 Days of Goodness is a program that we team up with the Seattle Seahawks here locally in Seattle, and with the legends, with the Seahawks alumni. And what we do is we take 12 days, like just 12 days of Christmas. We call it 12 Days of Goodness. And we go to community senior centers around Greater Puget Sound for one purpose, and that is to touch the hearts of seniors. The legends show up. These are the guys that they used to cheer for. So they have more relevance to them than our current players, right? And although they love the current players, it's just that heart of, again, that connection. These are the fans that that cheered for them. And we have luncheon events all over, and it's a big cheer, and we celebrate at the peak of the season. The Seahawks, and of course here in Seattle, like it is in Minnesota, you guys are centered around one team. You know, that's your team. And so we have such a great time. And of course, we have great sponsors that sponsor the program so that we can bring joy, and we do gift tables from senior providers that they come in and bring all kinds of goodies. And we've been doing now the program for the last 9 years. And it's really about educating about senior loneliness, the time of the year for seniors. The holiday season is often hard because they're facing that time where they shared with their loved ones. So we do that with then. And then during the pandemic, just because of the whole loneliness factor, what we found, what I was getting, and I'm sure, Lori, you can reiterate this, is so many families that were concerned with their loved ones being alone and quarantined during the pandemic. And watching their loved ones really just have, so much, fall around. They're not taking their medications correctly. They're not taking care of themselves. Their house is, going downhill because nobody's helping them clean house. So there's a lot of things that were going on during the pandemic. And so what we did with that was, I'm actually the senior admin on Facebook for a group called Washington Doodle Owners. And I have 2 doodle dogs, Whidbey and Skagit. And what I know that my dog, my Whidbey, who's my number one, she was with me every step of the way as I sat here by myself. And my dog was my constant companion. And I will always be so grateful for that connection, because I would have sat here alone and I wouldn't have her. And I know that, I realized what a gift she was to me during that time. And, the beauty of what we've been able to accomplish has been, that we have people, now that we can actually, get together. And so I reached out to my group and I said, I have this crazy idea. I'm getting calls like crazy, people concerned about their loved ones. And I'm just wondering, is anybody interested in getting therapy dog trained? We could take our dogs out to senior living communities and seniors that are locked, stay at their home, and we don't have to go in, but the dog could, and visit them. Maybe they could take a walk around the block, with them, where we could go outside and wear a mask and stay 6 feet away and things like that. So that's what we did. We got a group together and we've started this effort, and we now have over 100 doodles here in Washington State that are all making visits with seniors. And it is the most rewarding program. We're very blessed to do it. And, my Whidbey was the number one dog in the state in our group that was certified. And so it was really fun to have her be, ground zero from all the rest of the dogs that came after. So.
Wow, talk about a family that cares. Even the pets are involved.
I know. And it's really fun. And the doodles now are a part of 12 Days of Goodness, which is really pretty cool. And we are we're doing visits not only with seniors, but we go to like military bases as their soldiers are getting ready to be deployed. We're going to behavioral health, communities. We're going to schools. We're going to college kids when they are, going through finals and things like that. We go visit some of the colleges. We do, all the events for 12 Days of Goodness. And hopefully, we've been in lots of discussions with the Seattle Seahawks to do work with them as well. So as they go to children's hospitals and things like that. Yeah. So it's pretty, and of course, these little doodle dogs, they're great because they're hypoallergenic and they look like teddy bears and everybody loves them.
Oh, sweet. I love that. What a great note to wrap our show up with.
It
really shows the heart. Again, for our listeners, I really hope that you like, click, and share this episode here with Suzanne Newman with Answers for Elders.
And I want to say one more thing, Lori, is starting March 4th, our radio show will be syndicated in multiple markets across the United States. So please know to your listeners, go to our website. As soon as we know what cities those will be, March 4th, you'll be able to catch Answers for Elders Radio.
Oh, I love it. Congratulations. That's really, absolutely fantastic.
And I'm looking forward to having Lori on our platform as well, because there's a lot of we're very close to bringing her on board. And I am just really honored that we're going to join forces and do some amazing things together. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. So hopefully we'll get this all pulled together shortly. So it will just be so much fun to be able to work with you, because it's been way too long since we talked last time.
I know it was. Well, it's just really fun. I can't wait to see what happens between the two of us, because they always say, two working together is definitely greater than the sum of its parts. So we will be doing some amazing things together, my friend. And I'm so honored to have you in my circle.
I am too. Thank you. Again, to our listeners, like, click, and share this episode. Be a giver of hope. There's a lot of people out there you don't know that are struggling with elder care out there, not just dementia. There's lots of pieces to all of our lives, and not everybody feels comfortable sharing them all. But the more we give them the resources, the more they're going to feel comfortable, like, oh, I'm not an odd duck, or other people are going through this. And those walls come down and everybody's life, gets richer. So again, you can go to answersforelders.com, or you can email Suzanne at answersforelders.com. She's also on Facebook with Answers for Elders. And I didn't know if you wanted to give out a phone number or not.
Absolutely. If someone wants to reach out and call me to be either a part of our show, or just if you have general questions that we can point you to, they're welcome to call me on my cell phone, which I have with me 24/7. And that number is 425-802-5300.
Great. Thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. And don't forget to check out alzheimerspeaks.com. We've updated that site, and we will be also rolling out our book, Betty the Bald Chicken. I'm just waiting for the final proof to okay that. So that is a story that is, again, much broader than just dementia. It can be used in so many different elements when we just don't feel like we fit in, and teaches us how we can care better, bottom line. So again, have a wonderful week, everyone. Suzanne, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Lori.
It's been a pleasure. Bye now.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now, this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire. Become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.